if you want to add a table in your HTML in your web page using HTML code, then you can also style its rows and columns using CSS. Well, there are actually we are able to do many things, like you can select the first child, or which means the first row of the table, and then add a more style on it. So this might be mostly useful for the headers of the columns, and also maybe if you want to have the last child, again you can, this is usually, think about that you have numbers, and then at the very last row you want to put the average for each row or the total maybe. So again you can add a new style for it, and also you can specifically select which row you want to add. Like if you want to say, okay, I want to change the style of the second row, then you can just use this end child selector. Again, also there are different versions, like the end last child, which means counting from the last row that you want to, if you want to select the second, then you can use this. Of course you can change this number, this is just a parameter. Or well, if you can, if you know that in tables we have, like, to make it more readable, each row, like one of them becomes a color and then the other one is different, and then like every old has a different color and every even has a different color. So just to separate the rows, that's also possible when by using this end child old and end child even number, so that it changes every old row of that HTML, or every even row in that HTML file. So let's see an example. So for that one, I will use this platform now, GS Fiddle, in which we put here the HTML code. Here we can put the CSS code. Here we have the JavaScript, but of course, as of now, we don't have it. And then here you see the results. And here we have this table. As you can see now, we have this name, age, city, and then we have these three rows like Noor, Ali, and Mehmed with different values. And here is our CSS rule that we use for it, in which if you say, for instance, first child, and then we wanted to make it red, so here you can see that, or the last child, we want to make it green, and so on. And for the third row, which is like, this is the first, this is the second, and this is the third, we want to make it color. And as I said, like, you can change it, and then, like, if you want to make it this second one a different color, then you can also change it with this. So in short, if you have tables in HTML, you can modify its rows in a rows with any style that you want. But if you, instead of selecting rows, if you say TD, which means the columns, and then it will make the first column as red, and then again for the last child, then it will make the last part. And also if you want to make it again for the row, then it will make it the row. So you can also make it, sorry, if you select the TD with the child 2, it will use the second column, so you can make it row based and column based. And you might be asking, okay, why this is not affected? Well, the answer is that this is the header. And so again, well, if you have tables, you don't need to worry about the styles for each row and column. You can give different styles for each of them separately if you need that. Basically, hasSelector allows us to style an element based on its descendants. So it means that, well, look at this. Style the div tags if they have a p tag inside it. So you might think of it as opposite of what we have seen in the previous slides, where we said that, okay, which, well, in this one it says that, okay, we select the p tags that is inside a div tag. Now what we are doing is we are selecting div tags if they have a p tag in it. So now going back to our slides again, and now what we are saying is, if this, select all the divs which has a p tag inside, and then change their background color to lime green. So again, let's do an example for it. Here is our HTML code, again, which we have two div tags. One of them has no p tag, and the other one has a p tag inside. Okay, and then here is our div tag, which we say, okay, select the div tag that has a p tag and change their color red. So when you run this code, what we will see is the one that doesn't have a p tag will be black, like the default color, but the others, all the thing in this div tag will be red. For instance, you want to change the style of just the first letter of a paragraph. So then you can just say with these two columns and then the first letter, and then you just specify how you want to style. Or again, if you want to change the first line only in a paragraph which has multiple lines, but you just want to change the first line, again, then you can do it. So it's, again, the thing is, it's not the whole element but just a part of it. And there's this interesting part of CSS in which you can even insert a content. Now this is interesting. The reason is that when we are saying CSS, we say that, okay, it's about style. For the content, we focus on the HTML. HTML is for the content, CSS is for the style. But we also have actually a power to insert content in the HTML. How is that? By using this before and after parts, we can actually add some content before this tag or after this tag. So once you do it, like, again, it will insert this character before each of these p tags, and after that it will do it in this way. Now let's see an example. Here we have our HTML code in which we have a section, and then we have a p tag, we have first line, a new line character, and then the next line. And then here is our CSS code, which we said, okay, the first letter should be blue, the first line should be green, and also we have this insertion part. So when we run this code, what we see here is, now we have this section, but here we see it in this way because we inserted this less than and greater signs before and after the section text, so it becomes like this. And for this one, as you can see that now the first line is green and the first letter part is here, as you can see that it is blue. Well, you might say that this is the color is F and I. It both looks like they're both blue. Well, this is actually an issue with you'll just have it with um, with the letter I, for instance. But if you change it, for instance, fast car, let's say it, then you'll see that, okay, this just now only the first letter is the blue one. We have seen a number of selected in CSS, and well, of course, did we cover everything? Of course not, but it is just to give you an idea about what you can do with the selectors in CSS. And now we will talk about some basic text styles. And when we are talking about this, I also want to emphasize on this. Should you really memorize all these CSS properties? I don't think so. And because first, they are too many, and also you can easily know what kind of properties you need to change the color of a text or so. So the thing, but what I think useful is the awareness. I mean, you have to be aware of your capabilities. You might say, okay, I don't know exactly the name for the font size. Was there a dash between or so? You might not remember that, but you can easily check it. You can just Google it and so on. But the thing is, it's really good to know, it's really important to be aware of your capabilities with CSS. So we will basically go very briefly about it. Like, yeah, you can change the color, font size, font family, like is it Verdana, Times, and so on, the font weight, whether is it bold, normal, and so on. For the font size, you can just give a numeric value, or you can basically make it like very small, very large. It depends on the default size of your web browser. And also again, like the font styles, make it normal, italic. You can change this decoration by, you can make it underlined, line through, and you can align the text to the left, right, justify, and so on and so on. And one of the things that actually we will focus on is the font sizing. Why is that? Well, again, now when we are developing a web page, we have to be aware that we don't know what kind of devices people are using. Is it a desktop, a large screen? Is it a tablet? Is it a smartphone? Well, the answer is we don't know. But this is pretty important for our web page to look professionally, because if you set the font size, you can say, okay, this I need the text should be 24 pixels. Okay, that might be good. But what if the user is using a smartphone? Then maybe 24 pixels might not be that much good enough anymore. So this is it might be too big at that point. And also, regardless of the device type, like users can always and always change the size of their window. What we want to have is that our web page should look professional at each different window sizes. So for that reason, well, the size of our text is really important. For those cases, we can do two things. First, you might say, okay, it should be fixed font sizing that you want to be how by defining the exactly its font size by the pixels or the points, or you can make it a relative font size. What it means is, well, basically, it will set the size of an element based on its parent elements or the root elements. So we have these two options, EM and REM. EM is for the font size, relative font size to its direct or the nearest parent in the HTML tags, or an REM is for the relative font size based on the root, which is the HTML element. So if your web page has a default website font size, let's say 16, maybe you want some part of it to double of it, so that will be 32. But if your default font size is 12, then its double would be 24. So let's see an example. Here what we say is, for instance, we have a body font size. We wanted 0.8 times of its parent. H1 should be 1.2 times of its parent, so it will be larger. Div it will be 0.8 times of its parent, so it will be smaller, and so on and so on. So we can set the relevant font sizing based on this. So here we have an HTML code in which we say again we have this p tags, which we use this classes for the style, and some text that just explains actually what we are doing with the style. And we have this div tag. Again, we have this nested class, and again the same part with what we are doing with this text. Now let's look at our CSS code. So here we have the HTML. So we basically style the entire page. They are default size for our root size, which is, we said okay, it should be 16 pixels. Now for the body tag, we say okay, it should be 10 pixels, so they are fixed data sizes. Then now we have this px tags, which we applied here, as you can see. Maybe we can give some space to our HTML, so we apply it to here. Okay, now we said it should be 24 pixels. So when we look at our code now, as you can see that now this is 24 pixels that we have here, which is fixed. Now here we have this EM text in which we said okay, it should be 1.2 times of its parent. Okay, so when we apply this, here we said okay, its parent should be this. Okay, which is its direct parents of this part. So why is this So why do we have this 10 pixels? Well, again, this is in the body tag. Well, this is mostly about this online tool. Actually, it's not showing the HTML part, HTML code and the body part. But so since we write all this, so this is basically showing the body part of an HTML. So now in the body part we have this 10 pixels. So now this is in a body and this is inside that body, okay, and it says that okay, now it should be relative to the parent box. That's why, and this is again not to confuse, this is not under this one, these are different parts. So the parent class of this tag is the body tag. That's why it will be 10 times 1.2, which is 12. So that's why it is smaller than this. Then here we have this REM. So in REM we said it should be 1.5 times of the root tag. So what was our root tag's pixel? It was 16. What is 16 times 1.5? It is 24. So this is also 24. So now, as you can see, the size of this and the size of this are same. Now, when we are dealing with these, we also need to talk about this nested tags. So what it means is, like, let's look at this example. Here we have a div tag in which we have p tags, and in these p tags we also use some other classes or some other styles. So div has its own style and p has its own style. So for this one, now for this first part, let's look at this part. It doesn't have any specific style, so it will use its parent, which is the nested part. So what is nested? Let's check it out. It says okay, it should be 1.5 em. So its parent, so what its parent is, again, the body tag. So it's the body tag, which means that this nested box should be 1.5 times 10, it will be 15. Then for this one, now it's child em. What is child em? It says that okay, it's 2 times of its parent. Okay, what's its parent? It's nested, this part. So what is the nested font size is, well, it was, we had calculated here, it's actually 15. Then we even multiplied by 2 because our, now we said that it should be 2 times of it, so it should be 2 times 15, 30 pixels, which will be this part. And for that one, REM, we say that okay, what is REM text? It should be again 1.5 times of it. So we don't do this nested calculation here. We just immediately go back to our default, our HTML tag, which is 16 times 1.5, again it's 24. So it's again same with these two, with these texts. Well, the next style is, as you can see, is the list. So basically, if you have a list of items, you can also show style them. Like if it is an unordered list, you can buy, in which you use this ul tag, then you can make their this bullet list none or circle or square. But if you have an ordered list, which is stands with this ol, then again, then you need some ordered list, like some maybe ladders, numbers. So then you can, and then you can change their style by using the by different styles like upper Roman, lower alpha, and so on and so. And of course, the best way to learn CSS is to practice and practice and practice. And you can just go to this level 3 school, study yourself editor, try to write the code, change it, break it down, try to write the code, find your mistakes, and then edit it, debug it. That's the best way to learn programming. Also, that's the best way to learn CSS rule, CSS styling. When you have a web page, you will have multiple components, and then we also need to think about how these will be look like next to each other, because like will they stick to each other, or do you want to put some some space between them. So how we will do it? Well, based on this margin, border, and padding style options. So first, what are those? Well, let's think about that. We have this content area. Okay, it can be text, it can be image, and whatever it is. And then, well, first, do we want to put a border or around this one? So like just to make it more maybe clear it so that it will be more catchy, it will be easier to see. Then, well, if you decided, okay, we need a border, then what color will be is that, and what's its features? So we should define it. And like this border and the content, do we want to put a space between them? Like if you don't, well, you don't need to, then yeah, the border will just stick to your content. Or if you put some space, which we call it padding. So the padding basically is the space between your content and also your border. But then what is the margin? Well, the margin is the space that separates your boxes. So imagine that there is one more component, and then it might also have a border or so, but then do you want to put a space between them? Like if you set the margin 0, then its border will stick to this border. But if you put a margin in between, then yeah, they will be a little bit separated. So for the margin and padding, well, we just need to define the spacing. How much the distance we want, how much the space should be between the components or between the border and the content. So, well, you can use any numerical value. It can be a relative value or a fixed value. And for the margin, well, when we are setting margin or the padding, we should always know that we have 4 sides: top, bottom, left, and right. So, well, if you want for all sides to have the same margin, you can just put one number. But maybe for the top and bottom will have the same margin, but for the left and right you might want to put a different space. Then you can just put this. We can put 2 numbers. But if you have 4 different, or for each side you will have a different padding, then you can just put 4 values. Then it will go in the clockwise, starting from top, so top, right, bottom, and left, so that these numbers will mean these margin spaces. And same for the padding. And what about the border? Yeah, when we have a border, what is its width? How thick or how thin you want your border to be? And do you want your border to be dashed, solid line, a dotted line? How it's styled? And also its colors, because now it says you can see that it's a visible part, so that you can also set its color. You can specify them separately, like the width will be 1 pixel, style, color, or you can do all of them in one line by saying that, okay, this will be the width, this will be the style, and this will be its color. And when you see, now let's see an example. Like here you see a box, a centered rounded box, in which we have these 2 components inside that, one an image and also text. So for that one, we said display. This is the CSS for it, and let's check the CSS rules here. So display flex, this is something that we will see. It basically shows how these components will be oriented, will be put in this box. And then the column gap will be the distance between these 2 components, which is 1 rem, and then it will align the items centered. And then the padding is 0.5 rem, so the padding is the text between the space between this text and image and the border. And then the border is 1 pixel, it's a solid line, and its color is saddle brown. The border radius means that the corners are not sharp. As you can see that it's rounded. So if you increase this number, it will be even more rounded. And the width is basically the size of this box. It is 80% of its parent tag. And margin auto, which means that it's a super centered box, so that it automatically calculates space, and then it makes it a centered box. So, well, that's it for CSS style. For our class, could we cover all of them? Of course not. There are too many other details that you can cover. And of course, the best way to learn CSS is like other programming tasks, the is practicing. So your best teacher is always practicing. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening.